South Africa. Mr. Adorama made a deal with South Africa that if the Indians didn't have to carry the pass, they'd keep quiet as the Africans carry the pass. They're still quiet. Now, if the Africans gain control over South Africa, what are they going to do with those Indians? And there's about 1 million of them. Nobody's addressing themselves over who betrayed the Africa. Mahatma Gandhi went to India and someone ridiculed him for having tweed clothes on in dead summertime, dressed up like an Englishman in that hot country. He learned at high price the British was charging for fabrics. He took off all those British clothes and sent his people to the spinning wheel, do practical things. Martin could have done this. But I'm saying that Martin did a whole lot of useful things we need to look at, honestly, while doing some impractical things too, and not understanding that this nation would never have bought any nonviolence. Nonviolence is too good for them. They are morally not equal to a tactic as high as nonviolence. And yet he left a message for us as a people. And he never understood that Mahatma Gandhi was a B actor. Most of his fasts were fakes. He would tell the British, I'm going to fast into death, and the British thinking this is going to topple the British Empire, would literally beg him to eat. And he would fast about 30 days, and finally he would go in, bowing and scraping, sighs, sighs, sighs. What would you give me if I eat? Each time he would give concession. Each time he would get more. He would never get all he asked for, but he would always ask for more than he expected to get. When he put forth his 21 demands, he got 14. When he put forth his 17 demands, he got 10. And the man they denied him on the one trip, that was first on the list on the next trip. He was a supreme strategist. But if you think he was universal, then you don't know him. He didn't have nothing to say about the Chinese next door who was being pushed around by the Japanese. He did practically nothing of consequence for the so-called untouchables of India. He expressed some sympathy for them, but he didn't do much to change their lot. Now, had King known more about it, he would have chosen another model. Akhenaten, a pharaoh of Egypt, who outlawed warfare, thought so much of life he would not crush a flower. He could have chosen the example of Shama Balongongo in the Congo, who also outlawed warfare, gave equality to his ministers, erected a law in the Congo I still don't quite understand. Fathers of twins got more from the state than fathers of single children. And he would never argue with his ministers in public for fear it might hurt their feelings. So they would walk someplace out of earshot and argue. Very humane. But there are many humanitarians in Africa that he could have modeled after, had he known enough of African history to choose them or listen to other people. There was a bunch of hustlers around Martin Luther King. There's hustlers around all of them. Sometimes the information did not get through. This atmosphere saw the emergence of Elijah Muhammad, who I respect a great deal, although I have never felt a burning need for any form of organized religion, though I grew up a Baptist and was a Baptist Sunday school teacher. I've always been a highly spiritual human being, and I pray in my own way, not on my knees. I try to do something of consequence for my people every single day of my life without expecting anything in return. I have always said service is the highest form of prayer. Serve somebody. Do something. Find an African student who came here with those tropical clothes in the wintertime and see if you can get him an overcoat. Something. Just do something for somebody. I always thought prayer was somewhat of a waste of time for me. Meditation I do often, sometime early in the morning, sometime late at night. I made very good use of aloneness without ever being lonely. I read a lot. When I had my eyesight, now I listen to all kinds of tapes and I juggle my reading machine. But I keep up because I consider it an honor and a privilege to be the servant of my people. Because if the best thing I can do is to render a service, I think we need to examine everybody who calls themselves a leader. And we need to ask some serious questions about leaders. First and foremost, we need to ask, leader, where are you leading me? All right. There you go. A story is told about blacks seeing white people get on a train. And so the blacks scrambled to get on the train just because white people owned the train. Finally got down the road, and one black person asked, where is the train going? And the engineer, who was the devil, said, the train is going to hell. But before you jump on every bandwagon, find out where it's going. Before you join any religion, find out what it's meaning. And realize if God is in everything, God is in you. And that the ancient Africans did not use a church. And when the British and other missionaries came to Africa and built a church and said, this is God's house, the Africans said, if God can make the wind bring back the spring in the summer, make an earthquake, stop one, he couldn't fit into a little house like that. So what are you people talking about? Made no sense that you fit him into the house. He's bigger than the house. He's part of the totality of the world. I have been, since 1958, my first visit to Africa, an African traditionalist. I do not believe Africa needs any of the organized Western religions. I think the African traditional way of life is humane, it has dignity, it has respect. I deplore the fact that every African nation is an imitation European state. I think Africans need to go back to Africa, stop being Africans with African bodies and European minds and European values. I have serious questions about any African's worthiness to rule an African nation who is not married to an African woman. You must be symbolically what you profess to be. I think the wall between the black man and the black woman is a phony wall started by white sociologists. We think we can pick up that scenario. We got to fight each other because they say we must fight each other. We have to remember, we came out of a society where we created and accepted the first female God. It didn't demean a single one of us. None of us lost any manhood because of it. The first woman who to ride at the head of a state was in Africa. And her armies were almost all men. She didn't send her men into battle. She led them into battle. No manhood was lost. We are not Europeans. We don't have European values. We should not have Europeans' concept of the role of a woman. Dr. Nichols illustrates this beautifully in one of his lectures. He kicked history back 10,000 years. He showed that Europe had short seasons in that ice. He must harvest, store, all of these things in 3 or 4 months. So everybody had to work. Then he'd go back in his cave. Then if he got angry with his wife, and if he said, "Get out," she had to go out into the snow and freeze to death. So she began to cop a plea. The white woman is still copping a plea. But in Africa 10,000 years ago, when the woman had domesticated animal life, had started agriculture, had started her drugstore, which was the rainforest, she would go out and get something to cure her man, tan the leather was part of his clothes, sharpen his spear. Suppose he told her, "Get out." She'd look at him like a fool. Get out where? Who's going to take care of you? So our attitude toward women started all different from Europe. And we are wrong when we try to fit our attitude into his attitude. No wife beaters came out of Africa. No wife deserters came out of Africa. There was no single woman without husbands in Africa. These societies had order. And if after a certain time a girl didn't have a husband, the society made itself responsible for getting one for her. No one asked, "Are you in love with him?" Here is a decent man to be your husband. Now, to your romantic Western mind, this might sound bad. But remember, in that society, everyone got one. And you still looking. And can't find one. I'm not saying that we can reconstitute all old societies, but let's reconsider the values of the society. Let's reconsider the concept of nation as we conceive the nation to be. We had no tight borders. The African did not have the nation state. He had the territorial state, clustered